Hello again everybody, and welcome to part 5 of our journey through the Egyptian gods. Today we will do the weighing of the heart. We have but 2 gods to establish this. Firstly, the most feared goddess in the pantheon of Egyptian gods, the Goddess Ammit. The Underworld is somewhat of a mystery, so her construction was made of the most feared things in Egypt. The head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, the hind quarter of a hippopotamus, and able to bring about a second death. Anyway, let's get on with it. The Egyptian fascination with the afterlife and death itself is enormous. It could be said that Egypt is the largest and most famous cemetery in the world, and the lengths they went to were just unbelievable. When I was in Memphis, which is almost a complete ruin, there's very little left of it. However, the mummies of the people who were in charge are still quite well preserved. You can look into Ramses' face and make out his full features. But most of the structures that he constructed in the city he lived in are in complete ruin. So the goddess Ammit would have struck fear into everybody. For her role was, if you were judged not to be worthy, to eat your heart and abolish you from existence. And again too, this was adopted by the Christian faith in Revelations 20. You find speak of a second death. And indeed, that is what the Egyptians called the heart being eaten by Ammit, the second death. Her existence seemed to be supernatural, and she seemed to be a product of the underworld with no mother, father, or children. Just sheer horror, patiently sitting there, waiting for judgment. Who's to say whether or not she had an appetite or whether she detested her meal? But this was the Egyptian story of entry into the underworld, and its importance cannot be underestimated. It is very probable over time that the pronunciation has changed, but in English, Ammit means to leave out. I guess what they're trying to say there is that the poor soul who is teetering on entering paradise in the underworld has been omitted. Now you might be wondering why they're picking on the heart, and their reasoning was that the heart was the source of emotional intelligence and wisdom, and the controller for the body. Indeed, when the heart stopped, the person is dead. Now in modern times we dismiss this and we say that the heart's job is to pump blood around the body only. But a range of studies and a range of experiences, people who have had heart transplants, they've found that they take on some of the personality of the donor heart, and indeed people who never played guitar and such skills as that, upon getting a heart transplant from a person who did such things, take to doing it themselves. So the heart-brain relationship is many more times complex than we first imagined, and also the Egyptian wisdom again sees through the heart is part of the brain. Finally, we are to the last god needed for the weighing of the heart, Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, scribe to the gods, medicine, and he was born of Ra, but not supposedly needing a mother, and if Ra used a piece of him, it was probably his nose, judging by Thorpe's appearance. He has the head of an ibis, a particularly small head, which presumably would contain a small brain for someone who was the god of wisdom, but nonetheless this is the way he was represented. But not always. On occasions he was represented as a baboon. Indeed, in the tomb of Tutankhamun he's represented in that way multiple times. Whether Tutankhamun was fond of baboons or not, I don't know, but that was the way it was done. His daughter Seshat brings about some confusion. In some translations she was said to be his wife. Now I tend to believe more so that Mahat, the goddess of justice, was his wife, and it says something interesting that there cannot be justice without wisdom. So the marriage of the two brings two things together that go hand in hand. He published many books, including the famous Book of the Dead. There are endless publications credited to the god Thoth, and much science and mathematics indeed. His daughter seems to have taken over a great deal of his roles. The lines between them seem to blur. Maybe they were a bit overwhelming for him or something like that. But one core thing she does is she is supposed to guide the pharaoh's hand in the laying of the cord. Now, what the laying of the cord was, when the Egyptians were going to build a new temple or tomb or something of significance, the pharaoh would lay out a cord in line with celestial bodies. And that is why you hear stories of the pyramid is within such and such a star of so many degrees and all these things, and Seshat gets the credit for doing that. I believe it was probably done somewhat differently, but that is the way it works in the Egyptian texts. While on the subject of the Egyptian god for writing, no other invention has modernized the world more than the printing press, and credit for this goes to the German goldsmith Johann Gutenberg in 1440. And books have always been expensive. In the early days it was said that there were scribes who transcribed a book by hand, but this isn't necessarily correct. While moving around the Grand Egyptian Museum, I come across these innocent looking blocks, and what they did was they dipped them in ink and then they would press them against a papyrus, and it was a quick way of reproducing text. By no means as efficient as Gutenberg's press, but predating it by quite a long period. Now, I don't know from what period of Egyptian history they come from, whether they come from the Roman, Greek or Damastic period, but they are here in the museum and you can see what they can do, and it would have explained greatly the fast reproduction of books and the level of education that existed in ancient Egypt. The Greeks are well known for their knowledge of mathematics, and even democracy was originally a Greek concept. The god Thoth lives on in Greek culture with the name of Jehuti. And even today there is a movement known as Rakati, with one of the priests, indeed all of the priests, known as Tahuti. They claim links back to early origins. And in fact, I even know one, and when I was exploring the Egyptian ruins, or the potential Egyptian ruins, down at Carryong near Gosford, I took one along with me, and best I let him speak for himself.
Hello, my name is Tubeli Hyasilandu. I'm also known by the name of Tehutai, which is my Harakati name. And what the Harakati is it's an ancient group which goes back to the Aeons, and we exist in this day to carry on with the bringing forward of the ancient teachings. So I'm a very proud member of the Harakati, and today I'm speaking to you from this beautiful sacred site.
As we gaze upon the Egyptian stories, and indeed all of their achievements, we do so with our 21st century eyes. And one of the somewhat more modern ideas is that of the theory of Gaia, whereby the Earth and the solar system and all living organisms on Earth are all part of the one life form. And this does make sense, like we eat plants, and plants provide us with oxygen, and we provide them with manure. And there are other symbiotic relationships that exist within nature as well. However, this is not as new an idea as one would think. The Egyptians believed that the universe was very fragile, and it was up to us, human beings, to keep things in balance. And they also had the belief, complements of Thoth, that the whole universe was the one living organism. Now this is a big stretch from Gaia, but I tell you what, it's along the same lines, and a very interesting line of inquiry. The Nile flows in Egypt. The god Kapri does his work pushing up the morning sun. Later today he will have another soul to escort to the underworld. The mortuary temple at Gaza awaits its next customer. A person will die way too soon. Ancient Egyptians correctly realized that the greatest part of existence was not to exist at all, and their lives were significantly shorter than ours. Owing to the high infant mortality rate, the average age of death ranged between 19 and 25. And if someone was lucky enough to pass the 25-year barrier, a woman could expect to live 30 to 34, a man could expect to live 35 to 37, with women dying earlier on account of childbirth. However, when you died depended upon greatly who you was. Pharaoh Pepi II, by the text, was said to be 100 years old. However, it is estimated his life ranged somewhere between 70 and 100 years. The Pharaoh Ramses II is said to have died at the age of 90. And Egyptians had the belief that the ideal life was 110 years, but I doubt that anybody made it. And even today, a citizen of Egypt has a lower life expectancy than someone from the West, with females outliving males with an age of 74.2 years on average, and a male can only expect to live 69.8 years. Compared to today, if you are lucky enough to live in Monaco, you have a life expectancy of 87.1 years. Cruelly, there has been an unfortunate accident, and an individual lies close to death. The physicians have done all they can. However, a family is about to lose their breadwinner. As the priests say their prayers, the family must find the money for a big and expensive funeral, as well as completing in the proper manner the embalming process. The Egyptians believed that if the soul was to continue, the body could not decay or rot. On occasions there were insurance policies taken out by the way of statues in the likeness of the individual to take over should the body somehow be destroyed. Over the course of the 70-day embalming process, the priests perform a ceremony known as the opening of the mouth, and this is to animate the one's soul in the afterlife. Now, both invisibly and silently, it is time for the gods of Egypt to take over the journey of the soul. Anubis awaits the newly departed, and with the help of other gods, the duet, the journey of the soul, begins. The soul is moved along with the help of Kapri, and the first of 12 challenges will begin. The functioning consciousness of the soul could only hope to enter the field of reeds known to the Egyptians as Awu, known to us as heaven. The journey of the duet before one reaches the Hall of Judgment consists of 12 gates, all of them guarded by serpent gods. The person to pass through them must know their name and meet challenges of each serpent before they are allowed to continue. It is to be said that a life is relatively short, but the journey to the underworld is relatively long. Our traveller has successfully passed through the challenges thus far, but now awaits him is the Hall of Judgment, where he must address to the 42 judges the 42 laws of Mahat, saying that he has not to each and every one of these laws. If you wish to hear these laws, they are in the previous video. And then, moving on from that point, is the most frightening point of all, the point of final judgment, the weighing of his heart against a feather. To set the scene for you, it varies from translation to translation. However, on this occasion, it is set up as most texts show it. As always, you have Osiris in judgment. You have Mahat ready to surrender a feather to be weighed. You have Anubis escorting the traveller, as well as sometimes seen adjusting the scales. Whether this is in favour or against the individual, I do not know. You have the god Thoth recording the result, and then you have Ammit ready to carry out sentence, with no appeal, with no question, should the heart be found to be heavier than the feather. And on this occasion, you have the god Horus ready to escort our traveller to the field of reeds, or what we would call heaven. We do not know how heaven would have looked for the Egyptians, but on this occasion our traveller is successful, and this is how I would imagine heaven to look. And just as a poignant reminder, the message of all this is that judgment is waiting for you. Now, this is shown in the Book of the Dead, and I will run for you the quite long scroll of the Book of the Dead. 16 meters long, it reveals the secrets to eternal life. All that one needs to know to understand how to reach the afterlife and live forever. And you will find it not only in scroll form, but also on the roofs or walls of tombs of ancient Egyptians. And it was published by the god Thoth, or at least allegedly so. And I hope that you can recognize some of the gods featured within it, as I've done my best to address them for you. The prospect of a second death, the obliteration of one's soul by a myth, would have scared the hell out of children in ancient Egypt. On this one could be sure. So from an Egyptian perspective, that is the story of the soul's journey to the underworld and onto the field of reeds, which we know as heaven. A few videos ago I gave the story of Horus and how he became Pharaoh of Egypt. What I didn't mention that when there is a new Pharaoh, he in fact is said to become Horus in some of the scriptures. And when that Pharaoh dies, he presumably makes his way down through the underworld and he becomes the new Osiris. Sort of transmutation of different things. I've done my best to make things accurate, but there's so many contradictory stories and texts about the gods of Egypt. As an editor of a video, you've got to make some decisions on what to put in and what to put out and how to present it. Oh, hello, Kinsu.
Afraid I must speak with you. You haven't yet covered the fascinating story of Imhotep.
Yes, actually in my next video I will be speaking about the famous Imhotep, a man that became a god, who became a movie smash, a star, the true story of Imhotep. And as you probably noticed in some points of this video, the audio isn't as good as it could be. I need to buy some more equipment, so please like and subscribe so I can bring you better quality videos. Anyway, until next time, there's plenty more to come, and I'll see you again shortly.